Have you ever looked at an old photograph and felt like someone was looking back at you? In Salem, Massachusetts, in a Victorian mansion that had been abandoned for decades, a seemingly ordinary family photograph from 1890 hid a secret that had lain dormant for more than a century. 5 people standing or sitting solemnly in formal attire, but their eyes. The eyes of children seemed filled with secret fear, as if they were calling for help that no one could hear. Rebecca Martinez, an antiques collector who has wandered through hundreds of auctions and warehouses over the years, is not sure why she was drawn to the Whitmore mansion. The house had been locked for decades since no one inherited it and quietly slept among forgotten stories. As she walked through the dusty rooms with antique furniture covered in a heavy layer of time, Rebecca's eyes stopped at a carved wooden frame hanging on the wall of the dark hallway. The photograph inside looked like any other late 19th century family portrait: a stern, neatly bearded father standing behind a seated mother, 3 children arranged around them. Below the image, faded ink marked 1890. But what held Rebecca's attention was the extraordinary quality of the photograph. While most photographs from that era were grainy and blurry, this portrait showed every detail. Clearly the clothes, the furniture, even the wall behind it. The children in the photo with their tense eyes seemed to be hiding a fear that the photo deliberately did not reveal. Driven by curiosity, Rebecca bought the photo along with a few other antiques, unaware that this seemingly harmless photo would soon reveal a secret that had been buried for more than 130 years. Back at her antiques shop in Boston, Rebecca placed the photograph carefully on a table and began dusting it off, preparing it for display. But when she removed the wooden frame, she realized it was printed on unusually thick paper, unlike any photograph she had ever seen from the 1890s. She pulled out a magnifying glass and began examining each detail. And then, her heart began to beat faster. The way the family was framed in the photo was strange. Victorian portraits usually required the photographer to stand still for a few seconds. But here, Rebecca noticed a subtle movement. The mother's hand was slightly blurred, as if shaking. The youngest daughter's eyes were looking away, not into the lens. But what made her shiver even more was the mirror hanging on the wall behind the family. In the mirror, the reflection did not match the living room. Instead of seeing the photographer or the camera, she saw silhouettes standing behind what should have been empty space. The figures were dressed in dark clothes, seemingly holding ropes or something to tie, or threaten someone. Rebecca's hands trembled as she realized, was this really a family photo? Or was it evidence of a crime captured in that terrible moment? Not wanting to let this feeling haunt her alone, Rebecca immediately contacted her friend, Dr. James Harrison, a historian specializing in 19th century photography at Harvard. The next day, Dr. Harrison came to the store initially skeptical, but as he examined the photo under specialized equipment, his expression grew more serious by the second. This photo is definitely from 1890, he said, but the circumstances surrounding it are so unusual that they cannot be explained. The details he discovered sent shivers down both of their spines. The children's clothing was elegant, but hastily done. The buttons askew. The little girl's dress wrinkled as if someone had put it on for her. There were red marks on the father's wrists like the marks of a rope. And of course, the mirror behind him still had the strange figures, Dr. Harrison began to research the Whitmore family tree. Edmund Whitmore, a wealthy textile manufacturer, and his wife Catherine, from a prominent Boston family, had lived with their 3 children, 14-year-old Margaret, 12-year-old William, and 8-year-old Emma, at the Salem mansion since 1885. But news from October 1890 sent shivers down their spines. The entire Whitmore family had mysteriously disappeared. The house was unlocked. There was no sign of a break-in, no ransom note, no witnesses, and no one knew where they had gone. With the new information from Rebecca and Dr. Harrison, Sarah Chun, a cold case investigator for the Massachusetts State Police, known for her work on historical cases, immediately decided to open an informal investigation into the Whitmore family's disappearance. When she looked at the photo, she felt something inexplicable. It was not just a portrait, but a whisper telling of the last moments of a family in fear. She began to have forensic experts analyze the photo using modern digital technology. The results were chilling. The figures in the mirror were not ghostly reflections, not objects or light. They were people tying or threatening someone just out of the lens's field of view. Even when examining the wooden frame of the mirror under special lighting, a faint message appeared: "Help us." The scratches were intentional, as if someone was trying to send a final signal. Through technical analysis, Sarah realized the photograph had been taken in a hurry, unlike the usual Victorian portraits. The subtle movements, the unconscious expressions, all suggested the family was under extreme stress. It seemed the photograph was not meant to be a keepsake, but a record of the crime taken by the perpetrator himself as evidence. Sarah continued to research court records and business documents from the 1890s. The more she learned, the more chilling the picture became. Edmund Whitmore's textile business was failing deeply in debt, and he had borrowed from a group of investors with shady pasts linked to organized crime. The threatening letters became increasingly violent warning that anyone who failed to repay would be punished. The entire family. Another clue emerged. Marcus Crane, a professional photographer who had been hired to photograph the properties of families being foreclosed on for creditors, disappeared around the same time Whitmore went missing. Crane's wife's letters reveal the horror Marcus was forced to work against his conscience, photographing the Whitmore family while they were imprisoned, testifying to the ruthless power of creditors. And then, using modern equipment, Sarah found the last trace of Whitmore in the Salem mansion's basement, a secret compartment containing toys, clothes, and most importantly, the diary of 14-year-old Margaret Whitmore. The final lines, written in trembling, fearful letters, tell of the constant arrival of strangers. The crying parents. The children being forbidden to go outside, and the day the photo was taken. They came today with the photographer. Papa cried. They told us to dress up and smile for the picture. Mama whispered, "Be brave." I heard them talking about what's next. I'm afraid we won't see the morning light tomorrow. If anyone finds this diary, please remember us as we are not, as they want us to be. The words confirm the horror the photograph reveals. The Whitmore family had been imprisoned, photographed as a witness to the powerful, and then disappeared. But Sarah didn't stop there. She uncovered a web of crime. Many other wealthy families indebted to the same group of creditors had disappeared in the same way. The pattern was identical: intimidation, isolation, and then total disappearance. The abandoned houses still held hidden objects and photographs, traces of a ruthless strategy. The wealthy investors at the top of the network used the cover of legitimacy to threaten, coerce, and even kill the families of their debtors. Whitmore was just one of the most tragic victims. The Whitmore family photograph, once a mere relic, now became a living testament to the ruthless power and greed of the 19th century wealthy. It was also the reason Sarah Rebecca and Dr. Harrison was determined to bring the story to light so that the voices of the Whitmore family and other victims would finally be heard more than 130 years later. Even after more than 130 years, Sarah felt a responsibility to give the Whitmores justice, to be remembered as real people, not just ghosts in a photograph. She worked with the prosecutor's office to prepare a detailed report documenting the web of crime, the scars left behind, and the pain the victims endured. Historians, lawyers, and Whitmore's distant family learned the truth for the first time. Margaret Whitmore, in her trembling diary, pleaded for one thing: remember us as we were not as they wanted us to be. And thanks to Sarah's efforts, that plea was finally answered. A memorial service was held for Whitmore, where distant family members laid flowers for the first time, looking up at the 1890 photograph with deep grief and sadness. The photograph, once a mere curiosity, became living evidence of one of New England's most terrifying cold cases. Rebecca Martinez donated the photograph to the Massachusetts Historical Society, admitting that she could not live with it for herself, knowing that it carried the voices of the dead. Dr. Harrison published a detailed study of the case, which became required reading in courses on organized crime and American history. The Whitmore case also ushered in a new era of historical crime research. The techniques used to analyze the photograph were applied to many other mysterious cases, helping to solve more cold cases from the 19th century. The Massachusetts Police Department established a cold case unit with Sarah Chun as director to ensure no more cases were lost to time. Whitmore's story reminds us that behind every artifact, every photograph, there is a human story. And sometimes those stories need to be heard even after more than a century. The 1890 photograph was a curiosity, then a source of horror, and finally, a reminder that justice and memory can transcend time, allowing forgotten voices to be heard once again. Margaret Whitmore once wrote in her diary, "Remember us as we were." Now, thanks to the courage of those who refuse to let this story be buried, the Whitmore family is remembered not as ghosts frozen in fear, but as a loving family, taken too soon but remembered and cherished forever.